to the channel. Today is Monday, and it is True Crime and Makeup Monday. Today we're going to be discovering Richard Kuklinski, also known as the Iceman. And, yeah, as always, there's going to be graphic content. So trigger warning, content warning, all of the above, because we are talking about it all today. Richard Leonard Kuklinski, also known as the Iceman, was an American criminal and convicted murderer. Kuklinski was engaged in criminal activities for most of his adult life. He ran a burglary ring and distributed pirated pornography. He committed at least 5 murders between 1980 and 1984. Prosecutors described him as killing for profit. Kuklinski lived with his wife and children in the New Jersey suburb of Dermont. They knew him as a loving father and husband, although one who also had a violent temper. They stated that they were unaware of his crimes. He was given the moniker Iceman by authorities after they discovered he had frozen the body of one of his victims in an attempt to disguise the time of death. Kuklinski's modus operandi was to lure men to clandestine meetings with the promise of lucrative business deals, then kill them and steal their money. He also killed 2 associates to prevent them from becoming informants. Eventually, Kuklinski came to the attention of law enforcement when an investigation into his burglary gang linked him to several murders, as he was the last person to have seen 5 missing men alive. An 18-month-long undercover operation led to his arrest in December of 1986, and in 1988, he was convicted of 4 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment. In 2003, he received an additional 30-year sentence after confessing to the murder of a police officer. After his murder convictions, Kuklinski gave interviews to writers, prosecutors, criminologists, and psychiatrists. He claimed to have murdered anywhere from 100 to 200 men, often in gruesome fashion. None of these additional murders have been corroborated. Kuklinski also claimed to have worked as a hitman for the mafia. He said he participated in several famous mafia killings, including the disappearance and presumed murder of Teamsters president Jimmy Hoffa. Law enforcement and organized crime experts have expressed skepticism about Kuklinski's claimed mafia ties. He was the subject of 3 HBO documentaries aired in 1992, 2001, and 2003, several biographies, and a 2012 feature film, The Iceman. Richard Kuklinski was born on April 11, 1935, in his family's apartment on 4th Street in Jersey City, New Jersey, to Stanley Kuklinski, a Polish immigrant from Karwaz. I'm going to say this wrong. Karwaz Massivin Voidship. His father worked as a brakeman on the Delaware, Lackawanna, and Western Railroad. His mother was Anne Cecilia McNally from Harrismus, a devoutly Catholic first-generation Irish American who worked in a meatpacking plant. He was the second of 4 children, and Kuklinski's younger brother, Joseph Michael Kuklinski, May 5th, 1944 to September 22nd, 2003, was convicted in 1970 of raping 12-year-old Pamela Dial and murdering her by throwing her and her dog off the top of a 5-story building. When asked about his brother's crimes, Kuklinski replied, "We come from the same father." According to Kuklinski, his father was a violent alcoholic who beat his children regularly and sometimes beat his wife. Stanley abandoned the family while Richard was still a child, but returned periodically, usually drunk, and his returns were often followed by more beatings for Richard. In 1940, Stanley's beatings resulted in the death of Kuklinski's older brother, 7-year-old Florian Kuklinski, April 11, 1933 to February 1st, 1941. Stanley and Anna hid the cause of the child's death from the authorities, saying he had fallen down a flight of stairs. Anna reportedly was also often abusive. She would beat Richard with broom handles, sometimes breaking the handle on his body during the assaults, and other household objects. He recalled an incident during his preteen years when his mother attempted to kill his father with a kitchen knife. Anna was a zealous Catholic and believed that stern discipline should be accompanied by a strict religious upbringing. Richard was raised in the Roman Catholic Church and served as an altar boy. Kuklinski later rejected Catholicism and regarded his own mother as a cancer who destroyed everything she touched. Kuklinski's first wife, Linda, was 9 years his senior. They had 2 sons, Richard Jr. and David. While working for a trucking company, he met Barbara Pedricki, a secretary at the same firm. Richard and Linda divorced, and he married Barbara in September of 1961 and had 2 daughters, Merrick and Kristen, and a son, Dwayne. Barbara described his behavior as alternating between good Richie and bad Richie. Good Richie was a hardworking provider and an affectionate father and loving husband who enjoyed time with his family. Barbara remembered that when Merrick became seriously ill soon after she was born, Richard stayed up night after night to care for her. In contrast, bad Richie, who would appear at irregular intervals, sometimes one day after another, other times not appearing for months, was prone to unpredictable fits of rage, smashing furniture, and domestic violence. Sounds like bipolar or like schizophrenia, and this comes from somebody who's bipolar, so don't come for me. But it does kind of sound like the rage episodes that come with like bipolar or BPD to me. Zane. Barbara stated that she had once told Richard she wanted to see other people. He responded by silently jabbing her from behind with a hunting knife so sharp she did not even feel the blade go in. He told her that she belonged to him and that if she tried to leave, he would kill her entire family. When Barbara began screaming at him in anger, he throttled her into unconsciousness. And Merrick also remembered a number of road rage incidents involving her father. Kuklinski's family and Dumont, New Jersey neighbors were unaware of his activities and instead believed he was a successful businessman. Barbara described him as a wholesale distributor and said he employed an accountant. She did suspect that some of his income was from illegal activities due to their lifestyle and large amounts of cash he often possessed. However, given his volatility, she never expressed these worries to him, instead maintaining a don't ask questions philosophy when it came to his business life or associates. If Richard suddenly left the house in the middle of the night, Barbara would never ask where he was going. The Kuklinskis divorced in 1993 when Richard was in prison. Barbara said that the divorce was for money reasons. She continued to visit him in prison, but only about once a year. On June 6, 1984, Kuklinski filed for personal bankruptcy, listing debts of $160,697 and assets of only $300. In the mid-1960s, Kuklinski worked at a Manhattan film lab. Through the lab, he accessed master copies of popular films. There we go. And he made bootleg copies of Disney animated films to sell. Kuklinski also discovered a lucrative market for tapes of pornographic movies, copying and me and the English language are struggling today. Copying and distributing pornography was a regular source of income for him. I mean, if you can make your money, I mean, don't like steal, obviously. Don't steal. But I will never shame somebody for like working in the porn business or for having an OnlyFans, because you know what? Sometimes you just gotta do what you gotta do, and that's okay. It happens. I just realized that my whole makeup look changed. Hold on. I put on a different shirt, so my whole makeup look changed, which is fine. It happens, but that means that I'm not wearing certain things now. Okay. He was once arrested for passing a bad check. The only crime he was charged with prior to his arrest for murder. He was photographed and fingerprinted, but the charges were dropped after he agreed to pay back the money owed. Several of his known murder victims were men. We're going to try something today, sorry. Were men. He met through trafficking, pornography, and drugs. He also headed a burglary group with associates Greg Smith. Sorry, I said that completely wrong. Gary Smith, Barbara Deppner, Daniel Deppner, and Percy House. On January 30th, 1980, Kuklinski killed 42-year-old George William Malaban Jr. during a meeting to sell him child pornography tapes. Malaban was reportedly carrying $27,000 at the time. Oh my god. Sorry, I have cats and they stink. Malaban's body was discovered a week later on February 5th, 1980. Kuklinski had placed it in a 55-gallon drum and left it near the Chemex chemical plant in New Jersey. He cut the tendons of Malaban's leg in order to fit the corpse into the barrel. This was the first murder linked to Kuklinski. Malaban's brother told police officers that Malaban was meeting Kuklinski the day he disappeared, and after a plea bargain, Kuklinski admitted to shooting Malaban 5 times, saying it was due to business. On April 29th, 1982, Kuklinski met Paul Hoffman, a 51-year-old pharmacist who occasionally browsed the store. In Patterson, New Jersey, a storefront with a back room holding a wide variety of stolen items for sale. Hoffman hoped to make a big profit by purchasing stolen Tagamet, a popular drug to treat peptic ulcers, to resell through his pharmacy. He believed Kuklinski could supply the drugs and badgered him to make a deal. Hoffman was last seen on his way to meet Kuklinski with $25,000 to buy prescription drugs. After a plea bargain, Kuklinski admitted to killing Hoffman. He stated that he lured Hoffman into a rented garage and tried to shoot him, but the gun jammed. Instead, he beat Hoffman to death with a tire iron. He said he then stuffed the body into a 55-gallon drum and left it outside a motel in Little Ferry. One day, Kuklinski noticed the drum had disappeared, but never learned what had happened to it. Hoffman's body was never recovered. That's like sad. Like, you know, this person went out to meet somebody and you know they didn't come back. And then some number of years later, they admit that they killed them, but no idea where the body went. That's horrible. Just like, sorry, don't remember. By the early 1980s, Kuklinski's burglary gang was under investigation by law enforcement. In December of 1982, Percy House, a member of the gang, was arrested. House agreed to inform on Kuklinski and was placed in protective custody. Warrants were later issued. Warrants were also issued for the arrest of two other gang members, 37-year-old Gary Smith and Daniel Deppner. Kuklinski urged them to lay low and rented them a room at the York Motel in North Bergen, New Jersey. Smith left the hotel to visit his daughter. Kuklinski feared that Smith, after he discussed going straight, might become an informant. According to the testimony of Barbara Deppner, Kuklinski, Daniel Deppner, and House, who was in jail at the time, decided that Smith had to be killed. Kuklinski fed Smith a hamburger laced with cyanide, but when this was slow to work, Daniel Deppner also strangled Smith with a lamp cord. According to forensic pathologist Michael Baden, Smith's death would probably have been attributed to something non-homicidal in nature, such as a drug overdose, if Kuklinski relied solely on the poison. However, the ligature mark around Smith's neck and the fact that the body had been deliberately hidden proved to investigators that he was murdered. After Barbara Deppner did not return with a car to move Smith's body, Kuklinski and Daniel Deppner placed it between the mattresses and box springs. Over the next 4 days, a number of patrons rented the room, and although they thought the smell of them was odd, most of them did not think to look under the bed. Finally, on December 27th, 1982, after can't speak today. After more complaints from guests about the smell, the motel manager investigated and discovered the decomposing corpse. Now, this is what got Gacy caught. This is what got Dahmer caught. Was the fact that even though they were, they tried. He bleached bones, Dahmer did, and Gacy tried to line, the underneath of his house with, I think it was lime or lime salt or something like that. And they at least tried to cover up the smell. A lot of air fresheners, whatever. These guys didn't even try. They were just let's just put them under the bed and hope for the best. But I feel like what always ends up getting them caught is the fact that nobody thinks about the fact that a decomposing body, after a while, is going to smell a little funky. Because you haven't done anything to preserve the body, such as embalming or anything else. So eventually the smell is going to take over, and they're just it's fine. No biggie. I'm not giving you ideas here on how to dispose of a body. I'm just saying, they don't think about the fact that it smells funny. After a set amount of time, people are gonna notice the stink. So you might as well just not do it. And I feel like Jeffrey Dahmer also hid bodies in a drum, in oil drums or whatever. I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel like that's accurate. So don't know what was going on there. But and Chris Watts did the same thing with Shanann and his kids. What is with the oil drums? After Smith's murder, Kuklinski moved 34-year-old Daniel Deppner to an apartment in Bergenfield, New Jersey, belonging to Rich Patterson, then fiance of Kuklinski's daughter, Merrick. Patterson was away at the time, but Kuklinski possessed keys to the apartment. Between February and May of 1983, Deppner was killed by Kuklinski. Investigators deduced he was murdered in Patterson's apartment after discovering a bloody carpet. Kuklinski enlisted Patterson's help to dispose of Deppner's body, telling Patterson the victim was a friend in trouble with law enforcement and someone had broken in and killed him over the weekend. He added it was best to dump the body to avoid trouble with the police than forget about the incident. Kuklinski made another mistake when he informed an associate that he had killed Deppner. Deppner's corpse was discovered May 14, 1983, after a bicyclist riding Clinton Road in a wooded area of West Milford, New Jersey, spotted the corpse surrounded by vultures. Kuklinski wrapped the corpse inside green garbage bags before dumping it. Medical examiners listed Deppner's cause of death as undetermined, although they noticed pinkish spots on his skin, a possible sign of cyanide poisoning. Deppner was also strangled. Investigators guessed that Deppner had already been incapacitated, such as by poison, because the partially eaten corpse had no defensive wounds, and healthy adult men are rarely killed by strangulation. Are they, though? It's not impossible. Just saying. It's not impossible. You investigate true crime as much as, like, I do. It's possible. The medical examiner found Deppner's stomach full of undigested food, indicating that he had died shortly after or during a meal. The beans that Deppner had eaten were burned, so they reasoned the meal was home cooked because most restaurants could not get away with serving burned food to customers. Investigating officers discovered the corpse just 3 miles, 5 kilometers away from the ranch where Kuklinski's family often went horseback riding. Deppner was the third Kuklinski associate to be found dead. He's just tying up his loose ends, I guess. Everybody's gonna die. On September 25th, 1983, the body of 50-year-old Louis Leonard Maskey was discovered near a town park near Clousland Mountain Road in Orangetown, New Jersey, with a bullet hole in the back of his head. Maskey disappeared over 2 years earlier on July 1st, 1981. The day he was to meet Kuklinski at a New Jersey diner to purchase a large quantity of blank video cassette recorder tapes for which Maskey had $95,000 in his van. After another plea bargain, Kuklinski admitted to shooting Maskey. His body had been stored in a freezer, then disposed of in the park 15 months later. However, Kuklinski did not thaw the corpse before he dumped it. He also wrapped it in plastic bags. Which kept it partially insulated and partially frozen. The Rockland County medical examiner found ice crystals inside the body on a warm September day. If the body had thawed before discovery, the medical examiner stated he probably would have never noticed Kuklinski's trickery. Investigators realized Maskey was wearing the clothes his wife and son said he was wearing the day he disappeared. The discovery that Kuklinski froze Maskey's corpse encouraged law enforcement officers to nickname him Iceman. Newspaper reporters sensationalized Kuklinski's frequently used moniker of Iceman in headlines. Because the media loves a good nickname. But if we were to, we should just rename serial killers with, more accurate names, like Permanently Impotent. Jackass of the Year. Just like. In various interviews, Kuklinski claimed to have murdered around 200 people. He alleged he used multiple ways to kill people, including a crossbow, ice picks, a bomb attached to a remote-controlled toy, firearms, grenades, as well as cyanide solution he considered to be his favorite. I mean, like, I guess at least you're consistent. I just put that in my eye. That was so smart. What the frick? Hold on, sorry. You guys know liquid eyeliner is like the bane of my existence. He said he committed his first murder at 14 and murdered homeless people for practice. In 2006, Paul Smith, a member of the task force involved in arresting Kuklinski and later a supervisor of the organized crime division of the New Jersey Attorney General's office, said, "I checked every one of the murders Kuklinski said he committed, and not one was true." He added authorities throughout the country could not corroborate one case based on the tidbits Kuklinski gave. In 2020, Dominic Proliferone said, "I don't believe he killed 200 people. I don't believe he killed 100 people. I'll go as high as 15, maybe." Kuklinski also alleged he was a mafia contract killer, independently working for all the 5 families of New York City, as well as the De Cavalcante family of New Jersey. It's just like, yeah, that was me. I didn't. I was helping. He claimed he carried out dozens of murders on behalf of Gambino soldier Roy DeMio. He said he was one of the murders of Bonanno family boss Carmine Galante in July of 1979. And Gambino family boss Paul Castellano in December 1985. For the Castellano murder, Kuklinski said he was personally recruited by John Gotti ally Sam Gravano, who instructed him to kill Castellano's driver and bodyguard Thomas Bellotti. He told Philip Carlo he was hired by John Gotti to kidnap, torture, and murder John Favara, the man who accidentally killed Gotti's 12-year-old son Frank after hitting him with his car. His alleged involvement in mafia hits has been disputed by other authorities. According to Jeremy Capici, Philip Carlo claims the Iceman killed Paul Castellano, Carmine Galante, and Jimmy Hoffa, along with Roy DeMio and about 200 others. Come on, do you believe that? I don't know anyone who believes that. No one. End quote. After he became a government witness in 1990, Sammy Gravano admitted to planning the murder of Castellano and Bellotti, but said the shooters were all members of John Gotti's crew and were chosen by Gotti. He did not mention Kuklinski. Anthony Bruno felt Kuklinski's participation in the killing of Castellano was highly unlikely. Bruno noted... I just completely lost my train of thought. Bruno noted that in 1986, Anthony Indelicato was convicted of Galante's murder, and Kuklinski was not mentioned during the trial. Kuklinski biographer Philip Carlo, also acknowledged that Kuklinski's claim to have been involved in Galeante's murder was untrue. Like, they know, bud. Former Colombo family capo Michael Franzese called Kuklinski a pathological liar and said, "I spent 25 years in that life on the street. I never heard his name mentioned once. Not once." Kuklinski claimed he dumped bodies in caves in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and fed a victim to rats in the caves. However, in 2013, the Philadelphia Inquirer noted the caves have had a lot of visitors since Kuklinski's time, and no human remains have been discovered. Which, I mean, I guess if you've got a lot of people going in and out, you would expect to eventually find this body he claims is there, correct? So, oh man. Why? Well, we'll switch them out. Yeah. I'm kind of filming, love. Kuklinski, however, oh, no, wait, I'm way off here. Local cave enthusiast Richard Kranzel also quarreled the idea of flesh-eating rats, saying the only rats I encountered in caves are cave rats, and they are reclusive and shy creatures, and definitely not fierce as Kuklinski claims. Law enforcement officers also doubt he stored a corpse for 2 years in a Mr. Softy truck. And an ice cream truck. That's wild. In interviews and documentaries, Kuklinski says he killed 38-year-old Robert Joseph Prongay, a mentor to him. Prongay was murdered on August 10, 1984, shot multiple times in the head, and was subsequently discovered in his Mr. Softy ice cream truck. Robbery was not considered a motive at the time. Prongay had been about to go on trial for blowing up the front door of his ex-wife's house. Kuklinski says that Prongay taught him to use cyanide and other methods to kill, and it was Prongay who told him to freeze the body of Maskey. However, Kuklinski says he killed Prongay after he threatened his family. Law enforcement officials have considered Kuklinski a prime suspect in the murder since 1986, but the director of the New Jersey Division of Criminal Justice said no charges were sought because Kuklinski was convicted of other crimes. In 1993, in response to his claims, Hudson County prosecutor said new charges against Kuklinski were possible since the Prongay murder was still an open investigation. And they would assess whether there was enough evidence to prosecute him. Ultimately, no charges were brought against Kuklinski for the Prongay murder. Kuklinski claimed he killed 42-year-old Gambino crime family member Roy Albert DeMeo in an interview for the 1993 book The Iceman, The True Story of a Cold-Blooded Killer, by Anthony Bruno. He described DeMeo as a mentor of his, but he fell behind on a loan to distribute pornography. He received a beating. The two later became business partners. Kuklinski says DeMeo taught him how to murder for hire. Could be a way to make money. However, author Jerry Capicci, who has written extensively about DeMeo and the Mafia, doubts Kuklinski killed DeMeo or had close ties to the DeMeo crew. Most sources indicate DeMeo was killed by members of his crew, with no suggestion Kuklinski was involved. Kuklinski is not mentioned in Capicci and Gene Mustang's book about the DeMeo crew, Murder Machine, or Albert DeMeo's account of his father's life in the mob for the sins of my father. Philip Carlo, whose biography of Kuklinski includes the claim that he killed DeMeo, acknowledged in the postscript in a later edition that his claim was probably untrue. In his 2001 HBO interview, Kuklinski confessed to killing 36-year-old NYPD officer Peter Anthony Calabro, who was ambushed and shot dead by an unknown gunman on March 14, 1980. Calabro was rumored to have mob connections and was investigated for selling confidential information to the Gambino family. His wife Carmela drowned under mysterious circumstances 3 years earlier, and members of her family believed Calabro was responsible. At the time, his murder was thought by law enforcement officials to be revenge either carried out by or arranged by his relatives. Her brothers were regarded as key suspects, but the crime remained unsolved. The Bergen County prosecutor believed Kuklinski's confession to be a fabrication, but his successor decided to proceed with the case. In February 2003, Kuklinski was charged with Calabro's murder and received another sentence of 30 years. This was considered a waste because it was during multiple life sentences, plus he would be ineligible for parole until he was over the age of 100. Describing the murder, Kuklinski said he parked his van on the side of a narrow road, forcing other drivers to slow down to pass. He lay in a snowbank behind his van, and so Calabro came by at 2 a.m., then stepped out and shot him in the head with a sawed-off shotgun, decapitating Calabro. He stated he was unaware that Calabro was a police officer, but said he probably would have murdered him anyway. Kuklinski claimed he was paid to kill Calabro by Gambino crime family soldier Sammy the Bull Gravano, and the Bull provided the murder weapon. And the Bull provided the murder weapon. Gravano, serving a 20-year sentence in Arizona for drugs, was also indicted for the murder. Kuklinski was set to testify against him. Gravano denied any involvement in Calabro's death and rejected a plea bargain, under which he would receive no additional jail time if he confessed to the crime and informed on all his accomplices. The charges against Gravano were dropped after Kuklinski's death in 2006. In his 2001 HBO interview, Secrets of a Mafia Hitman, Kuklinski said he knew who killed 62-year-old former Teamsters Union President Jimmy Hoffa. Kuklinski did not claim any personal involvement in Hoffa's disappearance and presumed murder and did not identify any culprit. However, he later claimed he killed Hoffa. In his account, Kuklinski was part of a four-man kidnap team. They grabbed Hoffa in Detroit while they were in the car. Kuklinski killed Hoffa by stabbing him with a large hunting knife. He said he drove Hoffa's corpse from Detroit to a New Jersey junkyard. It was placed in a drum, set on fire, and then buried in the junkyard. Later, fearing an accomplice might snitch, the drum was disinterred, placed in the trunk of a car, compacted into a cube. It was sold as scrap metal along with hundreds of other compacted cars. It was shipped off to Japan to be used in making new cars. Deputy Chief Buccino, who worked on the Kuklinski case, said they took a body from Detroit, where they have one of the biggest lakes in the world, and drove it all the way back to New Jersey. Come on, Buccino added. We didn't believe a lot of things he said. Former FBI Special Agent Robert Garrity stated Kuklinski's admission to killing Hoffa was a hoax, and that Kuklinski was never a suspect in Hoffa's disappearance, adding, "I never heard of him." I mean, I guess that doesn't necessarily, though, state for a fact that he wasn't involved or that he didn't do it, but Anyway, sorry. Anthony Bruno said he investigated Kuklinski's alleged involvement in Hoffa's disappearance, but felt his story didn't check out. He opined Kuklinski made the confession to add extra value to his brand, and so he omitted the story from his biography of Kuklinski. Kuklinski came to the attention of Pat Kane, an officer with the New Jersey State Police, when an informant helped Kane connect him to a gang carrying out burglaries in northern New Jersey. Kane built a file on Kuklinski. Eventually, 5 unsolved homicides, Hoffman, Smith, Deppner, Maskey, and Maliband, were linked to Kuklinski because he was the last person to see each of them alive. It's a good reason. It's definitely a good reason, I'd say. A joint task force of law enforcement officials titled Operation Iceman was created between the New Jersey Attorney General's Office and the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, dedicated to arresting and convicting Kuklinski. The ATF was involved due to Kuklinski's firearm sales. ATF Special Agent Dominic Polifrone went undercover for 18 months to apprehend Kuklinski. Starting in 1985, Kane and Polifrone worked with Phil Solimine. It just sprayed myself in the mouth. Ugh. I didn't think that through. Okay. That's gross. ATF Special Agent Dominic Polifrone went undercover for 18 months to apprehend Kuklinski. Starting in 1985, Kane and Polifrone worked with Phil Solimine, a close, longtime friend of Kuklinski, to get Polifrone close to him. Posing as a mafia-connected criminal named Dominic Pravanzio, Polifrone purchased a handgun muffler combination from Kuklinski. In recordings, Kuklinski discussed a corpse he kept in a freezer for 2.5 years. He told Polifrone he preferred poison, saying, "Why be messy? You do it nice and calm." He asked Polifrone if he could supply him with pure cyanide. Polifrone told Kuklinski he wanted to hire him to murder a wealthy Jewish cocaine dealer, and recorded Kuklinski speaking in detail about how he would do it. Kuklinski was also recorded boasting he killed a man by putting cyanide on his hamburger, and of his plans to kill a couple of rats, Barbara Deppner and Percy House. On December 17, 1986, Kuklinski met Polifrone to get cyanide for a planned murder, which was to be an attempt on an undercover police officer. After the recorded conversation with Polifrone, Kuklinski went for a walk. He tested Polifrone's purported cyanide on a stray dog using a hamburger as bait and saw it was not poison. Suspicious, Kuklinski decided not to go through with the planned murder and went home instead. He was arrested at a roadblock 2 hours later. Kuklinski's wife was charged for interfering with her husband's arrest. Officers discovered a firearm in the vehicle, and she was charged with possession of a firearm because she was a passenger. Prosecutors charged Kuklinski with 5 murder counts and 6 weapons violations, as well as attempted murder, robbery, and attempted robbery. Law enforcement officials said Kuklinski had large sums of money in Swiss bank accounts and a reservation on a flight to that country. Kuklinski was held on a $2 million bail bond and made to surrender his passport. After the arrest, Kuklinski told reporters, "This is unwarranted, unnecessary. These guys watch too many movies." At a press conference, New Jersey State Attorney General W. Carey Edwards characterized the motive for the murders as profit and said he set individuals up for business deals. They disappeared and the money ended up in his hands. At trial, Kuklinski's former associates, including Percy House and Barbara Deppner, gave evidence against him, as did ATF Special Agent Polifrone. The case was prosecuted by Deputy Attorney General Robert Carroll, while Kuklinski was represented by a public defender. Kuklinski's lawyer argued Kuklinski had no history of violence and only projected a tough image, including his statements to ATF Special Agent Polifrone. In March of 1988, jurors found Kuklinski guilty of murdering Smith and Deppner, but found the deaths were not proven to be by Kuklinski's conduct, meaning he would not face the death penalty. He was then sentenced to a minimum of 60 years in prison. After the trial, Kuklinski pled guilty to killing Maskey, and Maliband. Kuklinski was sentenced to an additional 2 life sentences to be served consecutively. State prosecutors explained he would spend the rest of his life in prison even if he successfully appealed his previous convictions. Kuklinski also confessed to killing Hoffman, but prosecutors decided not to go to trial as they had a weak case and additional life sentences would not have impacted Kuklinski's prison stay. As part of the plea bargains, the firearm charge against his wife and an unrelated marijuana possession charge against his son were dismissed. Kuklinski was ineligible for parole until 2046, when he would have been 111 years old. He was incarcerated at Trenton State Prison. During his incarceration, Kuklinski granted interviews to prosecutors, psychiatrists, criminologists, and writers. Several television producers also spoke to Kuklinski about his criminal career, upbringing, and personal life. These talks culminated in 3 televised documentaries known as the Iceman Tapes, broadcast on HBO in 1992, 2001, and 2003. According to his daughter Merritt Kuklinski, her mother convinced Richard to do the interviews, and she was paid handsomely for them. In the last installment, The Iceman and the Psychiatrist, Kuklinski was interviewed by renowned forensic psychiatrist Dr. Park Dietz in 2002. Dietz stated he believed Kuklinski suffered from antisocial personality disorder plus paranoid personality disorder. Writers Anthony Bruno and Philip Carlo also wrote biographies of Kuklinski. Kuklinski's wife Barbara received a share of the profits from the Bruno book. In October 2005, after nearly 18 years in prison, Kuklinski was diagnosed with Kawasaki disease. He was transferred to a secure wing at St. Francis Medical Center in Trenton, New Jersey. Although he had asked doctors to make sure they revived him if he developed cardiopulmonary arrest, his former wife Barbara had signed a do not resuscitate order. A week before his death, the hospital called Barbara to ask if she wished to rescind the instruction, but she declined. Kuklinski died at age 70 on March 5th, 2006. At the request of Kuklinski's family, I'm struggling with his name today, noted forensic pathologist Michael Baden reviewed his autopsy report. Baden confirmed that Kuklinski died of cardiac arrest and had been suffering with heart disease and phlebitis. That is the sad, weird, and crazy story of the Iceman, Richard Kuklinski. As always, please don't do anything I wouldn't do. Be cautiously kind to others and make good choices. And I will see you all next week. Bye.